weather's changing. So, I just watched all 6 Sharknado movies in one day. And it was fucking incredible. Me and the boys sat down and we watched pretty much all of them in one sitting. We watched the first one late the night before, and then we watched half the second one, and then the next day we watched the rest in one sitting. We were on that couch for 7 hours, and it was time well spent. No regrets at all. I know a lot of you are probably like, Sharknado's so fucking dumb. I hate Sharknado. And to that I say, you probably don't like girls either. But yeah, it was, I fucking loved it. I don't think I've ever genuinely laughed and smiled so fucking much watching a movie. Oh my god, it was insane. I mean, start with Sharknado 1. Great introduction, fantastic. They're in fucking LA, and all of a sudden, tornado's coming. But then, it's not just a tornado, it's a Sharknado. And it's exactly what you thought it'd be. A tornado with sharks. They fucking wreak havoc. But luckily, Finn Shepard is there to save the day. I mean, it's a great introduction. It introduces you all the characters. Nova, Finn, April, the other ones. And R.I.P. Big Homie George. Oh my god. We really thought George was going to make it. It wasn't meant to be. The movie, it does a great job of throwing you for a loop. You know, you think George is going to make it, and all of a sudden, nope. And the bus driver, you know. My mom always said Hollywood would kill me. Literally, the Hollywood sign fell on his head. Done. Fucking spaghetti brained. Insane. Absolutely incredible first film. Possibly one of the best films ever. Should have been awarded an Oscar, or several. Just saying. It's arguably better than anything Christopher Nolan's ever made. I mean, Oppenheimer? Sharknado. Move on, Sharknado 2. They're in fucking New York. And this time Finn, he's with his wife April. The kids aren't there, but his sister and her family are there. And the Sharknado's coming. But this is the genius of the series. Each movie, they sprinkle a little more information, more Sharknado lore. And this, at the beginning, April gets her hand bitten off, right? By a shark in an airplane. And I saw some people like, how'd the sharks get in an airplane? And I'm like, well, if you'd fucking, open your heart and mind a little bit, you'd realize it's because it's a fucking Sharknado. They're in the sky. What don't you get about that? It could happen anytime. But April gets her hand bitten off, right? And she tells Finn, she's like, it's like the shark knew me. And that's when you start to realize there's more going on to these Sharknadoes than you think. They're not just random events. They're fucking coordinated attacks laced throughout history, dude. Incredible. They go to a baseball game, and then there's a guy there who fucking, another incredible side story. He gets all emotional talking about how he just wants to make his dad proud, and he never could hit a home run. And then he fucking sends a hammerhead shark into the scoreboard. Made his dad proud. Great storytelling. Incredible. This one obviously culminates with Finn getting sucked up into the Sharknado. Right? He's going up there with his chainsaw, fucking just sawing motherfuckers. And then he gets on the shark, rides the shark down the Sharknado, steers it towards the fucking Empire State Building, and spears it on it. Insane. And then, right when you think they're safe, there's one last shark that comes flying out of the tornado, right at Finn. And what does Finn do? He reaches inside a shark and pulls out April's hand with her gun still attached and shoots it out of the sky. Incredible. Incredible. And then Sharknado 3, oh hell no. All right, hey, me from the future. I'm going back over the footage and realized I missed a couple things, so I'm going to jump in here at a few points and just talk about the shit I missed. So, in this one, it starts out, they're in Washington, D.C. Finn is being awarded a golden chainsaw from the president, Mark Cuban. And while they're in D.C., a Sharknado hits. It attacks the White House. They got to go to a bunker. The whole fucking White House gets destroyed, right? And then it just up and disappears. And Finn's like, I've never seen that before. And then eventually they come back and they form a Sharknado wall. It's like 4 of them coming together as one unit. And another incredible action set piece. Finn and the Secretary of Defense, or the Chief of Staff or whatever, who's Ann Coulter, by the way, the sharks attack the White House. So what do when the building's flooding and the sharks are coming? They take a picture of George Washington off the wall and use it as a surfboard to go down the stairs and get away from the sharks. Insane. So this one introduces some new characters too. Finn's daughter has a little boyfriend she meets at like Universal Studios World or whatever, right? There are Twisters playing there. Foreboding, if you ask me. She meets this guy, and they go throughout the movie. They end up kissing. You're like, oh my god, they're in love. And then right when things seem like he's about to die, he makes it out okay. And we were all cheering for him like, oh my god, he's going to make it through. Fucking shark. Nope. Done. He didn't make it. He didn't make it. I think the real hero of Sharknado 3, though, was the guy from Malcolm in the Middle, right? The guy who played Malcolm from Malcolm in the Middle. Like the middle one, Malcolm. So him and Nova come back, right? And they have like this it's like GTA when you buy the truck, like the operation station, they got a van. And they're tracking these Sharknadoes, right? They're learning about them. Because I'm telling you, they're not just natural weather occurrences, right? They're insane. They actually find out that the sharks stay in the clouds for a long time and eat birds. Lore. They go to get an airplane, right? Because they need it. And Finn's son has taught him and Nova how to fly. So they go to get this airplane to fly it back to Florida, where his daughter is, at the Universal Park. And they get there, and the Sharknado hits. And the whole Air Force Base is like, hell's breaking loose, right? Malcolm, I don't know what his name was in the movie, but Malcolm, he's like, you guys get out of here. I got this. Hero. He goes to self-destruct the van to blow up the Sharknado, because that's how you stop it. You know, if our government would fucking watch Sharknado, and next time there's a tornado, send a couple missiles at that bitch, dude. The groundwork is laid. Like, but anyways, he goes to do it, and he goes to climb on top of the van and hit the self-destruct button, right? As he gets to the van, leg bit off. He's hopping on one foot, right? He's doing one of these. He gets to the ladder. He goes to climb it. Other leg, gone. So at this point, he's Legolas, and I'm not talking like the Archer from Lord of the Rings, but he's fucking arm climbing because he's a badass, right? He gets to the top of the ladder. Guess what? Arm gone. Now he's one-arm army crawling, right? And as he goes to hit the self-destruct button to save everybody, other arm gone. So now he's a nugget, right? And he's doing one of these. And then he gets up to the button, and what does he do? Chin. Blows up the van, saves the day. Medal of Honor worthy. Truthfully. So the end of 3 culminates, right? And they ultimately have to go up to space in a spaceship with Finn's dad, who's David Hasselhoff, Gil. They go up to space and they shoot a beam to stop the Sharknado. Riveting fucking experience, dude. This movie gripped me harder than I did my dick in middle school. It's wild. But while they're in space, the sharks attack, right? They all get swallowed by a shark, right? And They end up falling down into orbit, but they destroyed the Sharknado, so that's good. But they're coming down into orbit, and April, who, by the way, is pregnant during this whole movie, they hit the ground, right? And you think, oh my god, April's dead. There's no way she could fucking survive that, right? She's done. So Finn cuts open the shark to find April, right? And what reaches out? The hand of a baby. She gave birth to that baby inside the shark while falling through orbit. That's mind blowing. Whoever wrote this deserves a fucking raise. Nobel Peace Prize, even. Right?
Also important to note, the baby, they named Gil after Finn's dad because Finn's dad, when they went up in the spaceship, elected to stay up there to give them the opportunity to save themselves.
But then April gets out and we're like, oh my god, I'm so happy you're safe. And then she gets crushed. Dead. Or so it seems. And then there's Sharknado 4, The Fourth Awakens. Clearly, they're making fun of Star Wars, right? Or not making fun of, paying respect to, because there's nothing, these movies aren't made to make fun of. They're not jokes. These are serious cinematic masterpieces. They start off with the Star Wars title crawl, and then they even start off with the New Hope ship flying.
So this one starts off in Las Vegas. It's Finn. I'm not sure where his daughter's at. She wasn't there. He was with a girl named Gemini, who I think is later revealed to be his cousin. And they're with his son Matt and his new wife that I can't remember the name of. But they're in Vegas doing some family time, and a Sharknado hasn't hit in 5 years at this point. But once they get there, the Sharknado hits Vegas, and it is possibly the best action sequence ever filmed. There's a guy who literally fucking humps a shark and blows it up. They're on like a skyscraper, casino skyscraper, and there's a car up there that's for display. When the Sharknado hits, Finn drives the car off the building and onto a Las Vegas sign, and then off the sign about 150 feet to the ground, like a badass. And he also saved his son's wife, which he hasn't met at all, by the way. So apparently Matt got married while he was in the military on deployment and never told his dad about it. So there are some family issues. Also, great writing.
And at this point, April is presumed dead, right? But not quite. You find out later her dad, who's Gary Busey, actually, when she was pronounced dead, they pulled the plug on her in the hospital, it's explained. And he took her and did a bunch of like robotic work and basically turned into like a half human cyborg thing, right? But now she's a badass. She already had the saw hand, but now she's got jet boosters, lasers and shit. She's a robot basically. The emotion I felt watching Finn and April reunite, it was I cried. I really did. I shed a single tear. It was manly, of course, because I'm not a pussy. But a tear's a tear.
So moving on to the whole premise of this one. The premise of Sharknado 4, The Fourth Awakens, is that there's this guy named Aston, right? And he has developed this Sharknado prevention system. It's like giant towers that send out like big signals or sound waves or something that stop the Sharknadoes before they can do anything. And that's why there hasn't been one in 5 years. For some reason or another, the system stops working, or the Sharknadoes adapt to overcome the system, which is, I think, more likely. So it becomes clear that these towers aren't working. The defense system's not working. So they speed up development on what they call a mech program. So right away, you're like, oh my god, we're going to get a kaiju fight against a kaiju Sharknado. Not exactly. It basically ends with Finn puts on like this little like it basically looks like a robot suit that your mom would make you for Halloween, right? He's got like the AC unit arms. His head looks like a fucking tactical watermelon, right? It's that's the only disappointing thing in this whole series is the mech was small. Also important to note too, his dad is alive and works for this Aston guy and helps develop the suit. So OG Gill is undefeatable. The real meat and potatoes of this one, though, is they live on a farm called April's Acres because they believe April's dead, so they named the farm after her. This farm, I believe, is in Texas or some other desert looking place. I know it was in Iraq. And eventually, the Sharknadoes find their way to April's Acres. And this is when shit gets insane. So it starts off as a normal Sharknado, right? But then, as it gets into the sandy, dusty parts of Texas, it becomes a shark sand NATO. Because it's in Texas and it's in the sand, it gets to an oil field and becomes an oil NATO. After that, it comes into contact with a fire or something. I don't remember how it started, but it becomes the oil gets set on fire and it becomes a fire NATO. The fire NATO gets put out by a bunch of water, right? But then it comes into contact with a power plant and becomes a electro NATO. And then, as if they didn't get all the elements covered already, it comes into contact with a nuclear power plant and becomes a nuke NATO. So this one ends with Finn and April having to team up and fight the Sharknado. He's in the mech suit and she's a robot. So they go hell divers on the fucker basically. And then afterwards, Finn is like mortally wounded. And to save him and get his heart beating again, April grabs two baby sharks, runs them together, says clear, and fucking shocks him back to life. Shark fibrillators. Literally. They resuscitate Finn, they bring him back to life. Just as you think it's about to end, what happens? Fucking Nova, who hasn't been around at all this movie, comes riding in right to them on the fucking Eiffel Tower, signifying that the next movie, they're leaving America and going across the world. What an ending!
Sharknado 5, Global Swarming. This one, right off the bat, Indiana Jones font, right? They're going through the Indiana Jones stuff. They do the counterweight transfer. Great. But this one, this is where shit really picks up. They find out that these attacks have been happening all throughout history, and there's artifacts. Or not artifacts. Well, yeah, artifacts and teleportation points throughout the world. And these Sharknadoes, if you actually get sucked up into one, you can go through one of these teleportation zones. So they end up in Egypt. I think they end up in Rome at one point. It's just the teleportation zones everywhere. And there's somebody who's actively trying to come after Finn because he believes he's the reason these are happening. So basically, it's a globe-trotting adventure. It's fantastic. They go through all these teleportation zones, and they ultimately collect this artifact, and they get to this final temple where he breaks the artifact, and inside is a stone, which is used as a key. Puts it in and turns the dial, right? And that stops the Sharknadoes. But it doesn't. Long story short, the world ultimately ends up ending. Like, a nuclear fallout type of shit. Everything's destroyed, right? It's gone. And every character except Finn dies off throughout the story. Just as you think it's over, somebody drives up in a Humvee. And who drives up in a Humvee? Gil from the future. It's, I'm definitely missing some critical stuff here, but I needed to do this now when it's still on my fresh on my mind, but it's such a well-told story that this movie was not made for human consumption, like this film series, because my brain can physically not process it. I've had 3 strokes since the movie ended, just thinking about it. It's not made for the human brain to process. It is that advanced of a film. It's fucking ridiculous. So if I miss some things, pardon me. Moving on to Sharknado 6, the last Sharknado, It's About Time. I told the boys from the beginning, I was like, that one's going to be about time travel. Watch. They're going to have to go back in time and stop Sharknadoes. And that's what they do.
So this one starts right at the point that the previous one ended, where Gil takes Finn back in time. But Gil doesn't go with him. He just takes Finn there because Gil is already busy jumping through time and trying to prevent Sharknadoes while also looking for his dad. It's kind of confusing, but all time travel stories are, you know. Finn gets to prehistoric times with dinosaurs and Sharknadoes, right? And of course, you watch a shark and a T-Rex battle it out. Because why the fuck wouldn't you? And then he encounters a person all like dressed up in gear. Person takes their gear off, it's Nova. And then afterwards is a guy from the second one, I think his name was Ben. And then April shows up riding a pterodactyl. So it's a bunch of these characters who died throughout the movies. And it's basically explained that they didn't die at the point of their death. The Sharknado zapped them through time, and they've been in the prehistoric time waiting for Finn to come save them. And then after that, they start going through these Sharknadoes to different periods of time where important events are happening.
They go to medieval times and meet Merlin, who's also Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he is one of the most respected fucking scientists in the world. And if he's in these movies, him, a person of his intelligence level, is in these movies, that should be the dead tail sign that these are movies made for advanced IQ. They're not fucking jokes like people think. They're made with a purpose, and they're science backed. That's what people don't get. Anyways, they hop through time. They end up, the Revolutionary War was the next place they went. And Nova, her great something grandpa was there. And it's found out that he died in a boat. And she wants to save his life. But by saving him, she would alter the course of history and she would never be born. Dilemma. She elects to try to do it, but Finn stops her. He's like, we can't. Without him, there's no you. If you do this, there won't be a you. And it provides a dilemma for the movie. And this happens again. Eventually, next they go to Cowboy, hang out, Billy the Kid and shit. You know, cool stuff. Then they go to the time of the first Shark, or they go to like the 50s, I think. It was some Back to the Future type shit where Finn's mom was hitting on him, not knowing it was her future son. Which, how could you, right? Then eventually they get to 2013, I believe. Or maybe not. I can't remember the year. It's processing, right? Nova wants to save her grandpa because she said this was the worst day of her life and it changed her forever. Her grandpa died on a boat, was eaten by sharks. And she has a scar from sharks. She wants to save him. But once again, Finn is like, if you save him, you don't become who you are now. And the world's fucked. Because she is a driving force in stopping these Sharknadoes, right? She ultimately tries, but realizes she can't, and she fails. But then, the real kicker, they go to the future. And I guess I should preface, I forgot this again. In the prior one, Robot April blows up. So she sacrifices herself. She blows up and all that's left is her robot head. And Finn's been carrying this head around. But then he goes to the future in the next time warp. And it's a future run by Robot Aprils. Because when they were on the boat with Nova's grandpa, her head fell into the water and he never went to got it. And because he never saved her, when she was eventually rescued by somebody else, she turned evil because she felt Finn betrayed her and ended up turning the world into just robot people. It's insane. They defeat her, or so you think, and then they go back to years prior, and he ends up finding her head and rescuing her, thus preventing future Armageddon of robots. And then ultimately they save the world and the timeline. They save space and time. It's, without trying to understate it, this is the Mona Lisa of filmmaking. I have never been so moved. And I moved 3 times when I was a kid. And this moved me more. Just a couple more things to throw in there. Some things I'm sure I didn't touch on earlier, but there's a lot of great cameos. As the films went on, more and more famous people started showing up. Jared Fogle was eating Subway in a subway station. It's like watching a pun, dude. It's insane. Well thought out. Perfect. Al Roker, who's on NBC Today, he's a real news anchor, and he plays himself on the show. A bunch of news anchors play themselves on the show. It's really good tie into real life. One of my personal favorites was Rand McDonald, played by Gilbert Godfrey. It's insane. Like he is the on-site weather reporter, and he goes over the Sharknadoes. He follows them. And at one point, the Sharknado sucks up the cows and becomes a cownado. And then he ends up in Africa. And the warthogs, the zebras, and the giraffes all get sucked up into it. And what is it? So yeah, that's just I had to talk to somebody about this because my soul has been forever changed. Like the fundamental microbial makeup of my human composition is altered because of this film series. So yeah, I need to take some more time to process this, to be honest with you. I gotta do a lot more thinking, a lot more soul searching. I might have to rewatch them all, dude, because it leaves you speechless. But anyways, I just had to talk about this. So, I want you guys, reflect on your lives a little bit. What are you doing every day that can prevent a Sharknado? Are you tampering with time? Maybe you shouldn't. Are you naming your son Finn? Good on you. Be safe out there, people. Be safe. Because weather's changing. Incredible. Insane. Incredible.